and I was invited to speak to you all today to talk about some of the proposed changes to the county and special districts retention schedule, and also, I'm saying somebody said they can't hear me. Oh, people hear me? Can I get a sound check, Jennifer?
Yes, I can hear you, Chris.
Okay. So
I hear you. Yep, we're good.
Yeah. Oh, we got some people. Well, that might be an individual computer thing. Sorry. I'm going to have to look away from the chat, otherwise I'll be doing this squirrel on the road thing all day. Anyways, so I'm here to talk about some proposed changes that we are looking at in the general schedule. I'm going to talk a little bit about the process we've followed thus far, if you haven't been in the loop on this, and kind of explain how we got to where we're at. And I'm also going to give you a little discussion about some of the other rule changes that we are currently working on in an effort to continue to modernize the requirements regarding record keeping that all of us in public entities here in Oregon follow. So I should mention also, joining me on this call as my library in the wings are Chris Fuller and Gwen Amsbury from our team. I asked them to help to join here so that we need to reference some stuff. They can help look things up because it's hard to talk and look at things at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and share. And like Jennifer said, there'll be plenty of time for Q&A. Even with our late start, we baked in enough time so people have an opportunity to throw their questions at us. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and it should be sharing. I believe you should see that now. Okay, next slide. Okay, so things we're going to cover. I kind of mentioned it briefly. We are going to talk a little bit about administrative rules in general for like USLI. Why am I doing that? Because many people don't interact with them all that often other than reading them. They don't understand necessarily how they function or how they're formed, so I think it's useful to provide a base level of understanding for everybody on this call for that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the heavy topic for the day, which is the updates to OAR 166-150, which is our county and special district retention schedule.
Is now joining.
I'm going to talk a bit, I'm going to highlight some of the proposed changes we made that are significant. Now, it's a tricky thing to do with a schedule of this size to talk about, oh yeah, what changes did you make? Well, if you count all the little word changes and sentence structure things, literally thousands. And so what I've tried to do here is highlight some of the most significant things you might notice. However, there's not going to be any substitute for actually looking at the red line version yourself and reading through it and then asking us questions. So I've done my best to anticipate some of the big hitters, but you will probably find other things that you have questions about. And I will talk a little bit about what will be available for support for that as well. And then finally, I'm going to talk about updates to our electronic records requirements, those found in OAR 166-017, so colloquially known as Division 17. We are making updates to those, and we're at the beginning of that process, and I wanted to include that in the topics. Okay, so a little talk about our administrative rules. So administrative rules, obviously, they come off of our statute, which is ORS 192. In the Archives Division rules, we have OAR Chapter 166. We have sections that are most pertinent on electronic record keeping. I mentioned that. We have sections on the protection and storage of records, on microfilm, the care, feeding, and production thereof. Your records management responsibilities as members of a public entity. And then, of course, your general retention schedule is part of these rules as well. So these are sort of the main sections that, there are other sections as well that deal with archival practice, things like this. These are probably the most impactful for you all on a daily basis. So a little overview of the rulemaking process. So to give you a little bit of a hint on this, we started working on your schedule in, I believe, July or August of 2022. So we've been at this a while, and I'll get into that a little bit. I think I have a slide that talks a little bit about that. So the general phases we have followed, and there are slight variations, and this is a broad generalization. So if you do a lot of admin rule stuff, don't at me with the extra deadlines. I'm trying to simplify this as best as possible. So drafting and revising with a Rules Advisory Committee, colloquially known as a RAC, is the most time-consuming process. That literally took up, of those 2.5 years, of those like 3 years, like 2.5 years of that was that. Now, once you get to the actual filing process, we then file a notice of proposed rulemaking. So this is actually, we send that out as a public notice and send a mandatory one to the legislature, which we are required to do. It gets published in the Oregon Bulletin, and that's how everybody officially gets an eyes on it, and that's where the track changes version of it is available right now. At least 15 days after the bulletin is published, we hold a public hearing. Now, in this case, we held a public hearing on August, what was it, the 18th, 21st? I have that on another slide. Nonetheless, we have had that public hearing. That's a live sort of web meeting in this case. However, we also have a public comment deadline. And that's left to the agency discretion, depending on what it is. Typically, it's going to be a month-ish, sometimes less, sometimes more. In our case, ours was pretty much a full 2 months, so the deadline is September 30th. I will repeat that later, so don't worry about it. But that gives ample time for all of the members, all of the people that might be affected by it to have a chance to review it and provide comments for things you like, don't like, want to change, whatever. And then finally, the filing of the permanent rule, which is what actually makes the change effective, happens at least 49 days after the notice to the legislature. Now, in our case, because we did them at the same time, it's basically 49 days after that bulletin was filed, we could go ahead and go permanent on this rule. So that's just kind of a highlight of how the administrative rule process works in general. So now, there we go, there's the slide I was referencing. We're going to talk a little bit about what we did on this one. So, as I mentioned, in summer of 22, we put out a general solicitation. We reached out to every organization that we thought could be involved, as well as people on our general mailing list, and said, hey, what do you like or not like about this schedule? More importantly, what do you not like, right? What needs to be changed? So we gathered a lot of that stuff, and that goes on for several months of pulling in information, trying to start making some initial drafts. We formed a Rules Advisory Committee comprised of volunteers from a variety that reached out and said, yeah, we'd like to participate. From volunteers from a variety of counties and special districts that sort of formed our initial brain trust, the sort of people we bounce ideas off of and talk through, and then they would take it back to their respective agencies and talk to their folks about it. In 2023, we actually convened what we called our law enforcement sub-RAC, and this is because the law enforcement and or public safety sections of both the city, county, and the state police all kind of needed updates, but they all needed to be more or less in lockstep, which was a problem in the past. They weren't. And so that subgroup comprised of representatives of city police, municipal, county sheriff's office, and state police met repeatedly for a good long while to talk through some of the stickier bits, especially because there had been some legislation that had a fairly big impact on what certain retentions had to be. So we met with them and sort of then combined those back into our main group afterwards. In June and July of this year, we finally got our city and state schedules complete. We did their filings, got them permanently filed. We worked on all three of these at the same time, again, to try to reconcile and make sure they matched more closely, especially on things that are sort of shared between jurisdictions. On August 1st of this year, we filed our notice for 150, for your schedule. We filed that notice. August 21st, we held the public hearing. September 30th is our public comment deadline. And you might ask, what does that mean exactly? Well, that is the deadline that's designated for when we will take new comment coming in. So the idea is that's basically 2 full months since it was published for folks to say, I have a question about this, I'm concerned about this. We take all that feedback in, and then when we have essentially collected all of that, our team will review them. And we will identify if this is things that we feel should be changed, if it's things that we just need to explain a little better, if a wording change might be necessary, et cetera, et cetera. We will go through all of those prior to publishing the final published rule, the permanent rule. So when I say on this slide mid-October, that's a ballpark. I suspect, because we've seen some stuff coming in, we've already been discussing it, I suspect within a couple weeks after that deadline, we should be able to reconcile the remaining little bits, communicate what we need to communicate, and go ahead and file the permanent rule. If something were to come in that's a massive shift that we need to reconsider, this could take a little longer. At this juncture, we're not anticipating that. We've had a lot of time of discussion, and I'm not seeing anything coming in at the 11th hour at this point, probably, but you never say never. So that's why I can't give you a firm date on when this will be a permanent rule, because, of course, that will depend on what feedback we receive. Okay. So why were we doing this? What were our goals behind it? Well, first of all, the County and Special District schedule was last updated in 2012. it's a long time in records years, and in fact in real years. And so a lot of things had sort of gotten a little obsolete or just slightly antiquated. So we really were seeking to update language to match current business practice, make sure the terminology we're using makes sense to those of you in the counties and special districts, make sure that things are relevant, updating citations and references, right? So we cross-checked every single citation we found in there to make sure that's still a thing. We combined and simplified similar series for ease of use. We reduced the length of the schedule significantly. I can't tell you exactly, but there are many instances of situations that might have been 3 or 4 different series before, and we combined them into one, making it easier to use, locate, and follow, right? We condensed sections to make the schedule smaller, so fewer split outs of different sections in favor of more overarching sections. We reconciled a lot of differences between the city schedule and the county schedule in particular. This came up a lot in things where you both have like law enforcement, governance, certain types of utility stuff, all sorts of different things, right, that sometimes are in both. And we found drift, right, where it's like, oh, it's 60 days here and it's 90 days here. Why is that? So we talk and we figure out which one is the better one to go with, or maybe it's a third one that we haven't considered. So a lot of the work was spent doing that. Some really, really ugly drafts along the way. And then, of course, we changed retentions based upon feedback from the community, because over the years people would say, hey, this thing doesn't meet our needs, or hey, this is actually in violation of current statute, or whatever the case may be. So, of course, we changed retentions to better meet your business needs, to better meet your regulatory needs, etc. Okay, so now I'm going to run through a few highlights of changes that, in looking at it, we felt were significant to call out. This is not the full details. I would encourage you, I did not write them all out in links, so I would encourage you to follow up and look at the actual draft in there. You can search through the whole PDF and seek for things that are relevant to you, look at your sections. And I have a URL in here, but I can also tell you how to find it. In fact, actually, I'm going to ask Chris to go ahead and pull up the URL for the bulletin from August, the specific one for our filing, and put that in the chat for folks to see. Thanks, Chris. It's a little funny doing that because it sounds like I'm talking to myself, but I'm not. So some of the highlights here. First of all, we added clarifying language surrounding governing body meeting records and minutes. Specifically, we call out what has often been used as a bit of a loophole regarding the creation of minutes and the retention of recordings. And we note more explicitly, which is not different than what we've always said, but now it's in there, which says that if minutes are not created, the recording becomes the minutes. AKA, if you choose not to create meeting minutes for your governing bodies, you are now on the hook to retain your recordings permanently. Spoiler alert, generally not a great idea. It's much more difficult to retain recordings over time than minutes. So something to be clearer about, so we should remove that ambiguity. We made a lot of changes to balance the special districts and counties. What we found in many parts of the series, it referenced counties such and such, and then we found as part of this process that, in fact, many special districts also did this, and they were probably already following it, but the language in the rule was ambiguous and theoretically could be interpreted different ways. We wanted to get away from that. So in favor of that, we used the broader term agencies, which is, in this case, a generic term. We're referring to any government entity that falls under this jurisdiction, right? So that is something that we have attempted to just make broader and more equitable, really, in how we're labeling things. So it's clear that it applies to any of y'all whenever it may apply. And of course, aligning retention to account for equal value, because in some circumstances we found some series where a county budget was kept for X long, but a special district budget was kept for X, Y long, and we're like, why is that? Lots of discussions, and ultimately tried to make them, there's no reason they should be the same. We recognize in many cases it's complicated because some special districts fall under the aegis of a county, but not all of them, and so that was a lot of the conversations we had. We did a complete overhaul of the information systems records section. As you imagine, from 2012, the stuff relating to IT was antiquated. The language, the terminology used was old. It was missing whole chunks of things we are concerned about today. So new series you will find in there are things directly dealing with cybersecurity records, data set inventory records, and data breach records. These were major areas of improvement. So we pretty much, if you look at the IT section, you're going to see a lot of strike-throughs because we basically rewrote almost every single series, and these were new ones that were added in. So that was long awaited for sure. And then, like I said, we rewrote the descriptions and retentions in many others as well to account for current practice. Notable new series you might see sprinkled throughout the schedule. Communicable disease contact tracing records. It's funny how times shift and priorities shift, but in 22, when we started working on this, boy, this was a hot topic. It was a heavily requested item, given the pandemic we were just starting to emerge from. Now, you might think, well, we're not actually doing that right now, and I don't need to be, I'm not trying to be a downer about this, but you never know what's going to come in the future. And so as a result, we felt it was prudent to include a record for certain circumstances in the future anytime we maybe find ourselves in a situation where we need to do contact tracing within an agency, because that was wholly unaddressed before. So we don't have to do ad hoc advice in the future. We went ahead and put it on the schedule. Phone call recordings. This came up for folks that run call centers. Typically what we're referring to, and it does say in the description, these are ones recorded for quality control, right? And basically making it very clear that these would be until no longer needed. Therefore, they're an immediate purpose, so you're not getting hung on having to keep these a long time. Project management records. It really wasn't recognized as a discipline the same way in 2012. And so what we found is that we need to call this out separately. And this is different than the actual products of a project. This is like the stuff you use to manage and track it. So that's a new series that lists a retention there 10 years after completion or abandonment. Video surveillance recordings. Typically before, all of the recordings, series that mentioned recordings, they were for a specific purpose. They were they were dash cams, they were ones regarding investigations, things like that. We wanted to make a clear one, which is that many of us have security cameras for a lot of different reasons. Public transport districts have them on their buses. School districts have them. We have them on our public buildings. We have them all over the place, right? And so this is a broad retention to be used in any circumstance where they are not specifically called out elsewhere. And I say that because there are a few types of recordings that are specifically called out elsewhere on the schedule that supersede this. Those are in law enforcement generally, just FYI. These have a fairly broad statement, but essentially it's, if they're used as an investigation, they go with the investigation file. Same thing for any sort of actual court proceedings. They get pulled for part of that, but kept that long. Everything else is 30 days, which is pretty standard practice across the board. Most of these things are just recording an empty parking lot 90% of the time. There's not much value beyond the fact that at that point. So, major changes in the public safety area. Don't know how many folks we have on this call that represent those areas, but I'll assume we've got a few. These were more significant in some places. So, specifically, in 2020, HB 4207, which was later enrolled as 181A.667, parentheses 4, requires that all law enforcement officers' personnel records be kept for 10 years after separation. This was different than previous carve-outs and different than standard HR records in some cases. So this basically was ironclad, thin statute. We had to make the change, right? So you will find this, and also this applies to employee personnel records, disciplinary action records, and internal investigations case files. This basically existing collective bargaining agreements with typically police unions were allowed to play out, although at this point, 5 years later, I'm pretty sure all of those would be gone, and any new negotiations had to take this into account. So this is now the law of the land and has been, but now our schedule is no longer in conflict with that. So hopefully that will remove that ambiguity. Other public safety, law enforcement body-worn camera recordings. This had been a problem for us because this is an example of where the legislature had set a retention period, that being 180 days, and that was contradictory to other things we had out there. So we had to make a series that matched that. So now there's a specific one for body-worn camera recordings, body cams. A somewhat controversial one, at least in terms of the ongoing court cases about it and whether or not it will in fact ever really take effect. But the results of ballot measure 114 from 2022, which essentially created the requirement to issue permits to purchase firearms, we don't know if that's going to stand up in court over time. It's obviously been litigated heavily so far. We're not making a judgment about the benefit of it or not. But we felt it would be dumb not to include it, right? If it does go into effect fully and people start doing it, we need to know what's going on. So what we did is we went ahead and we attached retentions to that, and we've modeled that on concealed handgun permit records. So it's because it's basically serves a similar-ish function, so we just went with that. Don't know if anybody will need to use it, but it's there if you do. Oh, and we clarified for K-9 files. K-9s are personnel, so they are 6 years after their retirement, so they are not the same as law enforcement officers. They don't meet that definition, I would note, but they do count as personnel. So just for your information, in case you're curious. Okay, so understanding some of these updates. Did I do these out of order? No. Okay. Understanding some of these updates. We published the Oregon Bulletin on August 1st, and it has a full track changes version that shows all the struck and added text. Mentioned again, the public comment is available through the 30th. You can submit feedback to records.management@sos.oregon.gov. That is our general email address. I would prefer you send it there. If you send it directly to me, there is a chance, hopefully not a big one, but there is a chance that it gets buried in my inbox one day and I don't get it properly put somewhere. I'm pretty good at my job, but I'm not perfect at my job. And so you send it to that group. We got a whole bunch of people that monitor it, and we make sure that it's collated appropriately. So please do, if you have thoughts, questions, comments, submit them to that email box. I will note that we're not going to just we're not going to ignore you if you email us after the 30th. But what we're saying at that point is we won't necessarily be making changes to the schedule based upon your comments. We'd be happy to discuss things with you, but at that point we have to close the door at some point so we can get this thing published, right? So once the rule becomes permanent, so fast forward towards the end of October, it's now permanent. Congratulations. We will be putting an annotated guide on the Archives website. If you look at our Archives website right now, you'll see one of those for the city schedule already. It's not going to be an exhaustive list of every single change. What it will have is a variety of notes and comments that help you find things that aren't listed anymore or are listed under different names. So primarily, if you use a Control F search, you should be able to find what you're looking for. Maybe it's not exactly the same, but the terminology is there. You can find it. If the terminology changed enough that it no longer matches what was there before, we're going to put a note in there so if you go searching for it, you'll still find it on this annotated guide. And eventually you'll just learn the new language and it will probably be less useful. We will also update that annotated guide over time based upon questions we receive. We're doing our best to anticipate your needs, but of course we aren't you, and you know better. So you can tell us as questions come up, we will include things we feel like, oh yeah, this one's come up a few times, let's add that to the guide, right? And of course, as always, if you have questions, you can always reach out to our office and ask, right? We can't anticipate every question. We'll do our best to be transparent about that. But, you know, no substitute for just asking sometimes. Okay. So I'm almost done with my slides, and then we'll open it up to questions in the chat, and then I can address those. So another thing I wanted to let you know we're working on right now. Division 17. We are planning a full overhaul of that section. It was written in 2016, and as I mentioned, IT stuff, technical stuff doesn't last all that long. It's time. So we will be tackling all of these sections. Now, first of all, we are currently dealing with language in the electronic record-keeping system requirements. For those following at home, that is section, that's Division 0025 and 0045. You don't need to memorize that. The reason we're tackling those right now is that they contain references to obsolete standards we could not point to anymore. And so we needed to update that. Currently, if you go looking for them, you will find temporary language that we filed as a Band-Aid. We are working on the permanent fix. So we are working on that right now. Other sections we will be tackling, or at least reviewing, will be the sections on digitization, destroying paper after digitization, electronic record retention, file formats, and system security maintenance. We're going to look at them all. The whole thing's going to be open, and we're going to take a hard look at them all. As I mentioned, the plan for 2017 in terms of a calendar, right now we're removing obsolete certification language. We are working on creating a new set of required functions for more flexibility. So instead of a specific certification, we're going to be essentially giving you a checklist of things you have to be able to do, which should allow you more flexibility, and it should give you essentially a thing you can take to your IT and say, we need to accomplish this. Can you tell me how we might do that given our resources, right? So hopefully it provides more avenues to compliance while still safeguarding the records, right? It's a balancing thing. We are projecting filing our notice on November 1st. So currently we are meeting with a volunteer rack of people from different groups that have some tech savvy to sort of get a sense for what that is. So yeah, we're projecting November 1st as our notice filing for that one. In 2026, and I'm cagey about the specific times because a lot of things move around, we will be doing a complete review and revision of the rest of it. And so look for communications. I will be broadcasting that with general solicitations and suggestions, looking for suggestions as soon as we're ready for that. So look for communications asking for that this winter. It's a very broad term, this winter. But later this year, probably late this year, we'll start sending out, hey, send us your suggestions, please. If you have questions, comments, concerns about these things, let us know. Now's the time. So we'll be doing that. Okay, I'm going to leave my contact up here for a hot minute before I take it off. So as I noted, records.management@sos.org and .gov is the best way to reach us because we always have somebody monitoring that box, regardless of who's traveling or doing what or meeting with whom. So best way, and then they will route it appropriately. Okie doke. So, and I see that Chris did post that thing earlier. Thank you very much, Chris. I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm now going to go to the questions. And I can see the chat. Please do continue to throw them in the chat if you'd like. We'll go as long as we can here. Okay. Okay, so we have a question. The first, I'm just taking an order here, and we'll skim through here. So, will there be any direction on how records past the retention time should be or can be destroyed, and how we document the destruction of such records? Right. So this is a broader question about records destruction. So there are.
I can put our Division 17 requirements for the destruction of electronic records and Division 30 requirements for the destruction of paper records in the chat if you'd like.
Beautiful. Please do. Yes. We do, in fact, have requirements for destruction that are there already in terms of the procedures you follow. We will be looking at them to see if they're still relevant. But those are there, and we continue to issue new guidance. So if you read those and find there to be some confusion or ambiguity, we welcome questions that could help lead you in the right direction. And if the question is more about when you're allowed to do it, we're also going to cover that. That's also going to be something we throw in there. Another question, does the law enforcement 10-year retention apply to 911 dispatchers? I do not know. In that citation, you'll note that it says law enforcement officers as defined by ORS, what is it? Oh, no, I can't quote it. I don't know off the top of my head. It was something A. Anyways, 170? Does that sound right? Anyways.
181.
181. Thank you, Chris. See, this is great. I love having Chris here. He's fantastic for this. 181A. I do not believe so, but do not please quote me on that. I am not the expert on that aspect of it. So whether or not they are considered law enforcement officers, and I'm pretty certain they aren't, or indeed anybody would go by the definition given within that statute. That's what we are hinging on. That we just our retention just points to that. So we're staying out of that particular hair splitting. And I see, yeah, looks like we had another comment following up. I was going to look it up. Excellent. My agency is an intergovernmental entity formed by counties, cities, and special districts. Ooh. Can I confirm the county and special district schedule is the one we should be following? Well, James, we may need to look at that a little closer. There are others like this. Generally speaking, you would follow intergovernmental entity. Yeah, so there's a few different things on whether or not, in fact, you are subject to it or whether it's like a voluntary. So typically if you, well, for example, SBAO may voluntarily sort of say, we're going to follow for our internal records, their administrative errors, we're going to follow the same retentions that our members use. However, SBAO is not under our jurisdiction. It's voluntary. They're not they're not a government organization. However, there are some government, like you know, there are some government coalitions that in fact are a quasi-government entity and are subject. And so there's some gray areas there. I would suggest you would look at, you'd probably be okay following either, since at this point, most of the retentions that are overlapping should be identical. If you encounter a conflict, please do let us know and ask us, and we can talk about it. There may not be a perfect black and white answer every single time, what I would say. So I would say you might look at who the predominant members you have are. My hope is after these updates, you will no longer have the conflict of things being radically different in certain areas. Crossing our fingers on that. Let's see here. Yes. So Christy asked when I think we were talking about electronic record systems. So we don't use a specific permanent retention program. We just need to meet the standards. It can be any program as long as they, yeah, theoretically, Christy. So our current, well, going back, the current rules that are now current, they're overwritten by temps right now, but mentioned that in order to keep records of 100 or more years retention, you had to keep them within a system that is certified to a particular DoD standard. That DoD standard is no longer the law of the land. It's been withdrawn. We've moved on from it. Instead, as you note, we are going to provide a list of requirements that are things like the system must be able to retain metadata necessary to access and manage the records over time. It must provide the ability to export these records in a format that is readable without this software, for example. It must be able to destroy records from it over, at particular times, things like that, right? These are examples of the types of, so these are declarative statements that said the system must be able to. You could take that to any system you have and say, hey, can we accomplish these things? And there could be a variety of avenues to compliance. I'm not saying every system you own will be compliant. They definitely won't. But this is in recognition that there are lots of much more complex databases in use these days, a lot more complicated programs that may in fact be able to accomplish what we need most of the time. It could also be that it does most of the tasks, but you can find a workflow that accomplishes the remaining tasks, and as such are still can be compliant. So like I said, the rule itself will be pretty broad. We will have the requirements as a separate document to allow us, as a reference document, to allow us to keep them updated and update them over time. And then we will issue supplementary guidance and checklists and tools and things for you to use over time, right? So we're going to keep developing this toolkit. So we're really hoping this should be a lot more flexible way for folks to work, and it will still meet everybody's needs. So, but you will help make it better. So if you have commentary coming back on things, it will help us for the next version of that to improve it. Which city and special districts be scheduled as well? Yeah, so I think, Christy, referring to the similarities between different schedules. Yeah, at this point, we did everything we could to make the city and then the county and special district schedules match. Like if it's something you both do, you have the same retention. You will find some slight differences in terminology, in language. Sometimes one group might have an extra category, and that was in those areas where we could not quite reconcile because there was some difference. Somebody brought up a key difference. We confirmed it. We couldn't do enough. So you will find some slight differences. Those should be minor. They should not create major conflicts in 99% of the cases, I think. We could be wrong on that. I don't think we are. We worked really diligently. Chris and Gwen and I and others on the team have spent, I don't know, we didn't tally the hours, but hundreds and hundreds of hours poring over these things and talking over each one. So it's, yeah, they should be pretty close now. And again, we are not going to let it go another 15 years before we update it, or 13 years. No, the plan would be to make iterative updates over time, so it's not this massive project. This is a new commitment we're making. I'm not saying we're going to open it up every year, but at least every couple years probably we're going to do a sweep, identify if there's anything that needs updating. It'll be small iterative changes, so hopefully we can keep these in better shape overall. Let's see here. Candace asks, so the compliance window for these changes is the date the changes are permanent. Okay, so is Candace, I'm reading this as we make the changes, how long do we have to meet these new requirements before we're out of compliance or in trouble? Is that kind of the hint that I'm getting at? Yes, okay. So, yes, there's always the question that comes up, right? So say the retention before was 5 years, and now the new schedule says it's 7 years. Well, in some aspects, that means, yes, as of the moment that goes permanent, you may no longer destroy them at 5 years. However, you're not in trouble for anything you've previously disposed of under the previous rules. Likewise, if the retention, in most cases, you're going to find the retentions actually went the other way. We made them shorter wherever possible. In those scenarios, you already have the legal permission to over-retain, so you're not going to be in trouble for like having all of a sudden 5 extra years of stuff. You can decide for yourself what's the optimal way to go back and clean that out and remove those things. Yeah, so it's the date is of application is there. It shouldn't have any, as far as the schedule goes, it should not have any immediate like, just don't do, I would say don't do any destruction actions for a month or two until you have a chance to review it all. I would hate for you all to stumble into something accidentally because you got excited. So make sure you know the new schedule before you go destroying things, review it thoroughly, because that would be an issue. When we do the new electronic standards, it's going to be yes, there will be a permanent adoption date, but there will probably be a much greater length of time with compliance as people figure this stuff out. In reality, we're all doing our best, right? And we are not going to come kicking down your door. And so we will help you towards compliance. We will work towards that. I will say that if you don't currently have a certified system, for example, and you're keeping paper for those permanent records, that the path towards figuring this one out and working towards it will take a little bit of time, right? And you can talk to our office and we can talk you through it. But it will be like self-certified. It's going to be Scout's honor, right? We're not going to be necessarily signing off on a formal thing. It will be to the best of your ability. You can do this, and we're going to trust you to do that. And we'll help you along the way. Jason, this has not been recorded, but I will share these slides for sure. Yes, I will make sure the slides are shared and will be sent out. Yeah, so we will definitely do that.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
So we had planned to record this and jump to Teams. We didn't have the ability to record. However, I am recording with my phone. So it will be a low quality recording, but we will send something out at some point.
Excellent. Bootleg. We're doing this bootleg theatrical release style. Yeah. Excellent. I really like that movie, but the heads at the bottom of it are so distracting. All right. Yeah, again, thanks for everybody's flexibility. This is how it goes sometimes. You roll with it. And we will be communicating as often as possible, right? So, we've been talking at a lot of different, association conferences. So anybody that, wants us to talk to their group, this is the time of year we seem to have a whole bunch of some different subgroups, every little association. So always happy to share information with y'all, in the best way you can. And actually, as we do the electronic ones, we're planning on doing, we'll probably host a few just like y'all come webinars ourselves to help explain these in more depth, since we recognize that'll be a more significant shift for folks. So no specifics set on that yet when we're going to do it, but we are planning on probably hosting a few of those.
Chris, I'm sorry, I was looking something up. Did you tackle Gloria's budget question?
I probably didn't. I think I jumped right over it. I'm sorry. There you go. I missed that one. Sorry, Gloria. I'm thinking there's statute reasons why budgets and audits have to be kept permanently. Why were budgets kept for only 2 years for districts in the past? That is a good question. And in fact, that's actually one we asked ourselves, which is why we changed it to permanent. I think it had something to do with, if I'm recalling our conversation, and Chris, please do jump in if you recall differently, but I seem to recall some of the conversations being that in the past, many of the special districts were seen as like a subordinate function of the county. And as such, it was like their budgets would be rolled into the counties, but obviously we found that was not always the case. Do you have any other insight on that, Chris? I'm trying to remember.
I'm looking through the comments.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, that was one that we had a ton of discussion on, and it also came into when talking about budgets for the taxing districts and who was actually sending their budgets where. And there was a question that came from some of the special districts about why they wouldn't keep theirs permanently as well.
It was something that we received feedback on over the years. Coming into that was something we needed to look at coming into doing the revision.
So we'd have to go back and ask the folks in 2012 why they did that, or in fact, it may have predated that. So don't know, but we fixed it now. We'll give it a little more time if folks have more questions. Thank you, Gwen, for that additional insight. Chris and Gwen and I have been working on these and the other schedules most of the time for the last several years. So there aren't two people that know more about these things than these two. It feels like a threat, no?
Jinx.
I know, right?
But it was complicated, so we do have to go look up answers because there was a lot of discussion on so much of it.
It's very twisty.
Unknown participant is now exiting.
Oh, we lost unknown participant. So, as questions come up, we will be happy to address them. If future informational sessions are helpful or whatever else, we're all ears on whatever it is you all need. And yeah, think of us if things crop up. We will work with you on interpretation and things like that. And stay tuned. We will announce through the organizations. So she missed the part. Yeah, sorry about all that. Just as a reminder, deadline for submitting comments and suggestions is September 30th. And the rules that will go into effect themselves, if we're talking the schedule, mid-October. That depends on when I actually file it. So it'll depend how long it takes us to reconcile the suggestions that we get by the 30th. So essentially, any day past the 30th that could happen, realistically, it's probably going to be mid-October, would be my guess. Yeah, there was a question about, since the OERs are complicated, is the cheat sheet for very common record retention schedules? This is always such a complicated question. I know it sounds straightforward. It's very hard for us to distill down what people need, to be perfectly honest. We have often talked to folks about extracting sections that are pertinent to them. So they might, essentially create short sheets for these things. We're all ears if you have suggestions, but I think it can be hard for us unilaterally to decide what's important for you. We actually don't know. So if we did it, it would probably be a ham-fisted effort. But like I said, we will have that annotated guide, which should help. And then we freely encourage you to, make extracts of that, share it amongst your folks. So if you've got, your finance section, make sure give them a copy of just that section if they don't care about the rest, things like that. Yeah. Very welcome.
Chris, thanks again to you and your team for doing this. This is Mark Landauer. Very much appreciate you and your team taking the time to do this with us. And we'll look for other opportunities to engage in this. And if there's anything else from the group, I think that we've completed our tasks for today, although there is another question now.
Yep, I'm just looking. I'm putting it in the chat as well. Look for the annotated guide after it goes permanent. We're not going to put it out until we finalize our changes. So, and then we'll update it over time as necessary. So again, mid-October-ish, and we will trumpet this to all the groups. So we'll share it through the organizations, and so be on the lookout for that as well. Okay.
All right. Well, I don't see any new messages or questions. So I think we're at about time. So Chris and Amsbury, thank you so much. I hope I got that right. Again, thanks for doing this on such short notice. We had a bunch of questions come in, and we just thought, well, let's call the horse and hear it from the mouth. So thanks again, and appreciate your time. Don't mean to suggest that you're equines, but just the old saying. So thanks again so much.
All right.
Oh, wait, there was a hand up there. Karen?
I don't know if there was a hand or just continue to give a thumbs up. Sometimes people hit the wrong button.
I still see the hand up.
There's a couple.
Yeah, no, there's a couple. Are they able to
unmute? They should be able to.
Yeah, this is Joe Chambers. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Just wanted to let you know that if other people are like me, we didn't have access to chat and submit questions.
Okay.
So for some, just an FYI.
Yeah, sometimes the platform change. I know it's never perfect for everybody, unfortunately. Lisa, did you have a question? Oh, I think it's inadvertent. Okay. All right. I think we're calling it then.
Yep, that'll wrap things up. Thank you again for joining us and going over all this for us.
Thanks, Jennifer. Appreciate it. Let me know if we can help further.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.